Check it out. I'm trying to photograph this fly here. I'm looking at the shadow and the way the light is casted on this little leaf. What's poppin', people? It's Dante, currently on my knees here in Fairmount Park, Philadelphia, basking in the sunlight in all of its glory, going for a little hike. And what this reminds me of is the time I spent in Jericho submitting to God in a mosque for the first time. I traveled the road from Jerusalem to Jericho when studying abroad at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and at the time I was interested in pursuing documentary photography just for my own personal curiosity, and my intuition led me to this holy land, you could say. And so when I arrived in this location, you know, I was very unfamiliar with the cultural practices, the language, etc. But I found that through my intuition, entering a mosque and praying amongst a group of brothers, I actually found myself feeling most close to God. And I was born and raised Roman Catholic and do still attend church, actually recently been going back again. And I just wanted to remind myself of the way I felt when I was at the lowest elevated city in the world, this oldest inhabited city in the world, you know, the lowest elevated city. You know, when I think about that and I think about the closeness I feel to God, when you're lower, when you're close to the soil, when you're close to the earth, when you're close to the ground itself, you know, I remind myself that I'm bound by gravity. I remind myself that the laws of physics are what keep me here, keep me grounded to this plane of existence, to this earth. However, I think through our intuition, maybe we find God, you know, where the intuition that guides me through life, it's almost out of my control. You know, intuition kind of just carries me through life. And I find that through honing in on simple practices like fasting, I increase my intuition. I increase the way in which I perceive the world around me. I increase the way in which I make decisions with clarity. And I find that intuition is godlike, you know, where I observe these patterns in nature and human behavior, in the way the leaves fall, the birds fly, the people move and dance upon the street when I'm with my camera. And within these details, I find God. You know, there's this idea of our conscience and our conscience determining what is right from wrong, and through following that conscience, perhaps we're listening and obeying God. You know, through our inner moral compass, we set principles, we set ways in which we want to live our lives and values. And I remember as a young boy in Catholic school from grades pre-K to grade 8, the most important lesson that we learned were the Beatitudes. And through the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus told us, we are the salt of the earth. We are the light of the earth. And just like salt preserves food, just like salt flavors food, we too provide this flavor and value, and through this purification of the individual through virtue, yeah, we too can provide usefulness to our neighbors, to our brothers and our sisters. You know, there's something about salt that's so special. You know, when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Zambia, Africa, I was working with the Department of Fisheries, and I was working with rural aquaculture, and we had fish ponds, we had a lake, and after we would gather fish, we would lay it out in the sun to dry. And we would cure the fish and we would salt the fish, and for a few days the fish would dry out, and this process of drying would allow the bacteria to be removed from the fish and preserved the fish to be stored and then eaten later that week. And that preservation through the use of salt is so critical in certain parts of the world that use this method of drying fish, for protein is very, very, very scarce in these communities that are off the grid, in these rural communities. And so fish was the primary source of protein that I consumed for a very long time, needless to say. You know, and I feel that salt, without it, I mean, we really don't have flavor. You know, when I eat my meat at night, I'm just so grateful to have beautiful cuts of meat, grass-fed meat, and then, you know, sprinkling the salt on top, it makes it flavorful, you know. And that flavor, yeah, we will provide in life through our interactions and our deeds and our kindness that we share amongst our brothers and sisters. You know, there's something about salt, where the Roman soldiers were paid in a salarium. So our salary, you know, it derives through the word salt itself, right? 99% of our population, right, we're all dependent upon our salary to then go and purchase things and live our everyday lives. And when you think of the Roman soldiers receiving a particular salary, a salarium, to simply purchase salt, I think that sets things into perspective of what really is important in life, you know, to preserve life. Where salt was so vital to this culture, to these people, to the point where they literally set money aside for this use. I recently was reading the Bitcoin Standard, and in the beginning of the Bitcoin Standard, they discuss this word pecuniary, and pecuniary meaning of or pertaining to wealth or capital, and then we have piku meaning cattle. So quite literally the word derives from the word cattle, and cattle being one of the earliest forms of wealth, one of the earliest forms of money, right? Where we've used salt, we've used cattle, we've used these things as money in the past, or a source of wealth or capital, you know. And I think of the various monies from precious metals, gold, silver, seashells, grains, to now fiat currency that we sort of print out. And the problem with the way in which we now receive our salary is it's backed by a currency that depreciates over the years. And one thing I remember doing while traveling about Jericho was riding donkeys, and when I rode the donkey, it would kick you off, you know. It was kind of hard to tame. I remember seeing the boys playing on the donkeys, getting thrown off the donkeys. They would help me and ride the donkey, and it was kind of silly, but that's a mode of transportation that a lot of the Bedouin nomadic people use in the desert. And there's this saying that if man tricks the donkey with a carrot on a stick to move and to obey, what makes you think that a man won't trick his brother or his sister with a carrot on a stick? And I think we're all sort of chasing after a carrot on a stick in our daily lives. You know, that carrot being fiat currency, right? Where this goal of acquiring capital and wealth and material success in this world is quite meaningless at the end of the day, for man truly needs meat, salt, and water, and maybe a place to sleep. But the place that we sleep at night could be viewed as a bunker, or a place for us to sort of be safe from the external world, right? Think of the weather and the cold climates that we face here in Philadelphia, you know. But to squander time inside the home is maybe not a wise approach. Yeah, maybe the best way to live is to just simply be outside, for this is our home. You know, the native people that dwelled in the lands here in the Wissahickon Forest in Philadelphia originally, the Lenape tribe, they deemed the god to own the land, right? They didn't think anyone owned the land. But then some guys with top hats came, bought the land, and from there we have the Industrial Revolution, which I am actually grateful for, right? I think the Industrial Revolution, without capitalism, we wouldn't have all of these incredible amenities and things that we now take advantage of in our everyday lives in modernity, right? Think of the camera that we use, think of the iPhone, think of the automobile, and all of these things that help us live our lives. You know, they are there are many benefits to these systems that we put in place that I am grateful for, and we simply take advantage for these days. And so I think orienting ourselves towards meaning and not material is perhaps most wise. So thinking of currency and this notion of paying attention, you know, what are you paying attention to? For our time while we are alive is the ultimate currency. You know, there's this river I like to walk on along the Schuylkill River Trail here in Philadelphia, and I arrive at the top of a cliff each morning, and you know what I remind myself of when I'm standing at the precipice is that at any moment, at any point of the day, I could die. And I think that when I stand specifically at the edge of this cliff, a bee could sting me, the wind could push me, a bird could peck me, and I could go falling and toppling down, and then I would die and my body would decompose and nourish the soil. You know, the worms would crawl through my orifices, and my death would give new life to this earth. And perhaps to accept that and to recognize that sets things into perspective. And life truly is short when you think about it. Autumn is coming soon, fall is here, and maybe we get another 50 of them if we're lucky. Maybe we get another 60 or 70 more falls. You know, how long do we really have? So perhaps instead of thinking about money, we should cherish our time, and maybe the time that we spend alone, the time that we spend connected to this earth as gravity-bound humans, this time we spend alone connected to God or to something greater. Yeah, I think that is what truly matters. And you know, just zoom out, you know, like you're an eagle soaring in the sky, and look down from your eagle at yourself. You know, look at the timeline. You know, it's pretty short. So maybe it's best to spend our time wisely.